What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 46, episode 7, also known as episode several. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and I told Rachel before we started that the episode title was for me the best part of this episode for me.
This was such a good title. I watched the episode maybe like Thursday or Friday, and I texted Alyssa, like, hey, haven't watched the episode yet, but it's titled Episode Several, which I just thought was so freaking funny before I even watched the episode.
Yeah, and I also like that Jeff during the challenge this episode, like said, you've been up there several minutes, which to Jelinski means 7. So even people who didn't maybe remember Jelinski's comments in the first episode still are like, oh, that's why it's called episode several. So great work by everyone involved.
Now we know why Jelinski in his exit interviews, he said he made a huge impact on this season and his name kept coming up, which we heard his name come up in episode 2, which I would say, okay, that doesn't mean your name kept coming up. It came up the episode after you were eliminated. But now, a handful of episodes later, that does make sense now. His comments about people kept talking about him even though he was eliminated first.
Yeah, I hope that he doesn't get brought up again though, just because I feel like he's becoming more of a meme than anything, and I don't always like that. So, yeah.
For him, he probably wants to keep coming up because that probably increases your chances of being invited back for a future season. Like, if you are eliminated early, you want something like this random. You want to be memed and people talking about you because then maybe your name would be in the discourse of being invited back, where otherwise, first boots, early boots probably aren't invited back.
Yeah, that's true. But then also, I feel like sometimes one of the critiques of like new era Survivor is that some people are playing to be invited back instead of playing to, be like a good player. And it's kind of like if you're just playing to be invited back, that's not going to make a good first game.
Yeah, like Jeff says, play like it's your second time. Leave all the balls to the wall so then you are willing to take risks, willing to make moves, don't just play it safe.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off this episode with Venus thinking that Soda wrote her name down. Literally, Venus says, yeah, it was you, Soda. Soda says, no, it wasn't me. And then Venus saying, yeah, it was. I was like, this is just so random and weird. And like, I feel like really encapsulates their sort of bickering relationship, like we saw last episode too, when they're sort of talk fighting to each other. From Venus's point of view, I do feel like it's a little bit odd to be so assertive. Usually, if you're accusing someone and they say, no, it wasn't me, you're just like, okay, great. You let it go, or you say, oh, sorry, I believe you. And maybe note it for later. You aren't going to double down and be like, no, it was you. And they're going to keep saying, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things is too, like Venus was wrong. I understand doubling down if like you're right and you have like a good reason for it, but it feels like Venus's only reason is like, oh, Soda and I have beef. When like there's no strategic reason for Soda to have like voted for Venus when everyone else was voting for Mo. And it's so weird. I feel like that's something that we kind of see consistently from Venus this episode is she doesn't know when to back down.
And then it really didn't matter that they were a little bit bickering, fighting here, because then Charlie confesses, which, similar to Q, I was like, oh, that's a little bit odd. Why would you confess here just because you felt bad about writing her name down? But like it was the plan. Okay, let me put a vote on someone else just in case the shot in the dark works. Like it's a smart thing to do. Why wouldn't you want Venus and Soda to be at odds with each other, thinking that Soda wrote her name down and for them to be even more fighting? Like, that's a good place to have people fighting.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place to have people, at each other's throats. Definitely didn't make sense. Maybe Charlie was worried that, like, later on down the line that could come bite him in the butt because, like, Soda was telling the truth. And I think sometimes holding on to a lie for longer can make you seem more guilty if you ever come clean with it. So if Venus and Charlie ever work together in the future and Charlie was like, oh, actually, I was the one who wrote your name down, Venus would be like, and why didn't you tell me until now? I think especially with like the kind of personality that Venus has, sometimes like just coming clean immediately is better because she might not see it as like, oh, this was a smart game move. She's going to be like, you personally hate me. So
And I guess that is true. Later in the episode, we do see Venus tell Charlie, like, I don't really care that you wrote my name down, da da da. We can still work together. So maybe from Charlie, if he had like a guilty conscience, and like you're saying, okay, it could come out later that he was this vote, and then Venus might rage fire on him and hold a grudge against him. So maybe it does make sense to bring it up now. But also, I feel like in such a large vote, it is difficult to figure out who voted for who, so it is easier to hide. So in this kind of case, like people might not suspect that it was Charlie who wrote down Venus's name last week. Since so many people voted, it is easier to hide compared to like a 5-person or 6-person vote. Then you might as well just confess and say you were that person because it's really easy process of elimination to figure out who voted who.
yeah, so I don't know. It definitely did cause more conflict this episode, though. So I feel like it's kind of cool. Even if it wasn't the best strategy move for Charlie, I liked it because it made my television more interesting.
And like Q said, Charlie probably shouldn't have confessed here. Keeping Soda and Venus fighting is probably a good thing. And then cut to Charlie saying, Q is running the show and I want him out.
That felt so strange to me. Like, I really wish that we got the like thoughts on why Q is running the show because I feel like you could say that like Q Tiff Kenzie's alliance is running the show, but Q specifically, I was like, huh?
I feel like we are probably going to see Q get voted out soon. It seems like this episode we have multiple people saying Q is running the show or Q is just telling us what to do. That's a little bit annoying. That maybe this is foreshadowing for next week or 2 weeks down the line, but it did seem like a harsh cut from Charlie, like laying down, like, yes, Q, I'm sorry, I did this thing, it was wrong, coach me up, to Charlie, like, yeah, no, Q, why are you telling me this stuff? Obviously, I know it and I want to vote you out.
Yeah, I feel like also the preview for next week definitely seems like Q is going to be getting into some hot water. We already kind of see Kenzie and Tiff being a little bit displeased with Q and the way that he's quote unquote running things. So I feel like Q's on his downward slope. Charlie recognizing that Q might be on his downward slope is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think we could see it happening in the next 2 episodes, maybe. At the start of this episode, also, we see Ben have a panic attack in the nighttime, which ended up being a big plot line this episode. And then we also see Kenzie helping Ben out, making sure that Ben is okay, feeling comfortable, which is very sweet of Kenzie. She seems like a very good person. I thought it was funny, like, Kenzie's side here and like her caring and loving personality to cut back to Banu saying like, oh, Kenzie was mean to me. And then Kenzie felt so bad, even though she really didn't snap at Banu at that time in that episode.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because Kenzie talks later about how like making real human connections is how she like makes money in the real world. And I feel like that definitely shows in the way that she like carries herself in Survivor because of the way that she's like approaching like Ben, the way she approached Banu. I think maybe Jess could have used some of that compassion too, but yeah, I think Kenzie is really proving herself to be a social threat with like the way that she's handling these things, and I'm wondering how long it's going to take for people to start being like, okay, we got to get Kenzie out.
I agree. They should have listened to Banu with the mermaid dragon. She like lulls you in and then she's going to attack you later.
Yeah, she has the upper half of a mermaid, which is just a human, and the bottom half of a dragon.
Which with this Ben scene, I was like, he was sleeping crisscross applesauce. I just thought that looked really uncomfortable. Like, do your legs not fall asleep and get all tingly sleeping crisscross applesauce?
It helps him like with his hip flexibility. I don't know.
I'm like, I don't think I don't know. I don't think I could sleep with your legs crossed like that. It just looks like it would hurt, and then you'd wake up really stiff.
Maybe it's also a way to like get more space between you and the people next to you. Because like if you have your legs crossed, then like your knees are your widest point, and so people can't like roll closer to you. So if space is a concern, I'm thinking outside the box.
True. Everyone should sleep starfish then, and then you could take up all the space. But then people might want to vote you out because you're taking up too much space in the
Yeah.
shelter.
I feel like sleeping crisscross is something that you can like write off as like, oh, this is just a quirky little thing that I do. We're sleeping starfish. Everyone knows that you're doing it to get more space.
I also feel like from like a protection standpoint, crisscross, I feel like I would feel so vulnerable. Like everything is exposed. That's why the fetal position sleeping or like sleeping on your side is so good because like you're protecting your like inner organs and your main organs in the center part. He's just so exposed laying like that.
No one's going to be stabbing you on Survivor.
I don't, the bugs and the monkeys and stuff could come and get you.
I would not ever think about how exposed a sleeping position makes you. But okay, you do you, Rachel.
Yeah, I just I was like, I don't know how he can sleep crisscross. We gotta ask him this. So we need answers on this.
Yes, yes, we do.
So we get to the immunity challenge. Like we saw in the preview last week, it is the double tribal split tribal council. So we are rolling our eyes here. Boom. There are the two teams. Purple ends up being Charlie, Maria, Venus, Soda, Tevin, and Liz. So 2 OG green and 4 OG orange. The orange team here ends up being Ben, Tim, Q, Tiffany, Kenzie, and Hunter. So it's a 2-3-1 split of the OGs. With this group, I do think it's really lucky that the Yanu 3 got stuck together again. They're really lucky last week, all being safe. And I think, again, with this draw, they are lucky and safe because I feel like if it were split like 2-1 and Q, Kenzie, or Tiffany were on an island like Hunter was this episode, they probably would be the easy person to be voted out. But now that the three of them are together here and one of them does win immunity, I think it gives them a lot of power. And going forward, they're a solid 3.
Yeah, I think though Hunter being on his own didn't actually turn out that badly for him. Like in some ways, I feel like it made him less of a threat, not more of a threat. So yeah, I think the Yanu 3 were really lucky to still be together. And it makes me wonder, like, was there production fingers in that or was it just luck? Because I don't know how to do math. But like it seems like them being on the same team, all three of them twice in a row is like unlikely. But
Someone smart can do the math on this. Yeah, I think with like Hunter being on an island this vote, I seeing the split didn't really think Hunter would be eliminated here, and he does have an idol, so even if he were to catch some votes, he wouldn't have been eliminated. I feel like Hunter's got skills in Survivor that he could probably get himself out of a pickle situation. I do feel like, yeah, with Q, Tiffany, and Kenzie being a threesome and people know them as a 3. Banu was bad mouthing them pre merge, even. We could see like Tiffany or Kenzie let Q get voted out, especially because other people are seeing Q as a threat or like being too much of a coach.
mm-hmm. I do think one of the things that's interesting about this challenge is I wonder how much the like relative ease of the challenge compared to the last time this challenge was run like affected the results. Because I feel like Q had his whole thing of like, oh, I jumped off so that people would see me as less of a threat type thing. And then, yeah, there's so many things about this challenge. I wish that I could like interview someone and be like, do you think that this was like a part of it? just because I feel like maybe the fact that Hunter like didn't win the challenge also helped his like thing of like, I'm not as much of a challenge threat as you guys think I am. The only reason I did well on challenges is because like my whole team was doing well and I wanted to make sure they didn't vote me off. So, yeah.
Yeah, I could see like that argument for both Q and Hunter, and we even heard it a little bit at Tribal Council from Hunter. Like, oh yeah, I helped them win. I was good at, puzzles, sandbags, all that jazz. But like we needed to win, otherwise we would be going to Tribal. So maybe Hunter too threw the challenge or didn't necessarily care if he won the challenge because he has the hidden immunity idol. I think for like threat management, if you're winning the first individual immunity, that looks a little bit dangerous, especially being one of like the tallest, buffest men out there that could easily get you targeted or eliminated. But this challenge, you are balancing on that triangular platform on the water with narrow footholds. Because of the split tribal, 2 people are winning immunity. The last person standing wins reward for their team. And then the first group that goes to tribal, the person voted out doesn't make the jury. I thought this was a fun challenge. I really liked the commentary throughout the challenge, like Q trying to play the alphabet game and then everyone doing it wrong and then everyone doing it wrong on purpose to like peeve him off.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny when Charlie was like, B is for Baltimore, and then he like smirked at the camera because he knew Q was gonna get mad about it. Like, I feel like the banter during the challenge was really top tier.
Yeah, and then like Tim saying, "What's up, Jeff?" And then Jeff giving him the time, and then Q also saying that he's not allowed to talk because he's not in the fight anymore. His father has told him that since he was already eliminated from the challenge. And then Tim starting to give random shout outs. Q starts talking again, and then Tim says, "You need to shut up because you're not in the challenge."
Yeah, I thought that was funny because as soon as Q started talking again, I was like, buddy, didn't you just say you were gonna shut up? And then Tim said it for me. It's always nice when someone in Survivor is saying exactly what you're thinking.
So I thought this was a fun challenge. I liked the banter from everyone. Kenzie ends up winning for orange team, and then it's down to Tevin and Maria for purple team, where Maria wins.
Woohoo! I feel like those were two people that I feel like were kind of unexpected winners, but I also feel like the fact that it was an endurance challenge where you had to balance on a balance beam maybe like leaned it more towards women winning than men just because like smaller feet you can balance easier maybe. So I definitely thought like Kenzie and Maria were not the two people I would pick to win the first individual immunity.
I would agree with that assessment. So, first up, Orange is going to Tribal Council. Um, I think Tim sort of misplayed it here. Obviously, I guess since he gets voted out by the end of the episode, but Tim telling Q, "Hey, we've got one Nami here. Hunter's on an island. Let's vote Hunter out." Then Q continuously saying, like, "What are you talking about? Hunter's in the 6. We can't vote Hunter out. Why would we vote Hunter out?" I feel like this was a misread, like not changing his idea after seeing the Q pushback. Although you're like, okay, if Tim and Ben are actually number ones, Tim isn't going to throw Ben's name out there. Him trying to save Ben and put Hunter's name out there is trying to help Ben out. I can see that. But I feel like Tim pushing too hard on Hunter and wanting to try to save his bestie, I guess vertently gets him eliminated at the end of the day. Like, okay, sure, you can like your alliance member Ben, but you're pushing a little bit too hard trying to save him that you end up getting yourself voted out.
I think part of it is too, like, it seemed like Tim was still very focused on like the Nami Siga thing of like which of Nami and Siga is going to have more of the numbers. And like Q, as a Yanu member, just really doesn't care whether someone is Nami or Siga as long as they're not Yanu. And so I feel like also the whole like Hunter is Nami, it's kind of like to Q, you're not actually giving me a reason to vote out this guy. You're just telling me something that I already know. So I feel like that was also a misplay by Tim, where like he should have had another reason to vote Hunter out that wasn't just Hunter is Nami.
And similarly, like bad last week, Tim not telling Maria about the +1 alliance. Tim maybe should have gone with the +1 alliance and been with that 6. He didn't want to go with that alliance from what we've seen. He didn't really think that was a real alliance. So here, when you've got like 4 people of the +1 alliance on this team, that's a majority. You might as well just fake it for this time and go with the +1 alliance to further your own game. And even if your reason for voting Hunter, besides that he's OG Nami, is that Hunter's really, really strong, he's going to win challenges, that doesn't really play to Q's ego, because then we see Q in confessional like, I don't know about that. Maybe I can win against Hunter, hee hee. So it's like, for a big guy like that, saying someone else is going to win all of these immunities, they might not take that well as a strategy argument to want to vote Hunter out, because they too think they can win immunities because they're strong, because they've played sports growing up. So like that kind of argument isn't going to work with Q. Maybe if Tim brought that to like Kenzie and Tiffany, like Hunter's really good. We saw him at all of these puzzles. He's going to beast out the challenges. Maybe that works on other people that can't use Hunter as a shield. But for Q, if I were Q, I wouldn't vote out Hunter, because Hunter is a shield for Q, because they're both like similarly tall, similarly strong. They're both like physical assets. You wouldn't want to vote out the other one, because then you're probably getting eliminated next.
Exactly. So, tons of misreads by Tim. I feel like a lot of people figured that Tim was going to go out either at Mergatory or at the Split Tribal, just because he didn't really get a lot of content, and it feels like generally they under edit the people who go home at Mergatory or at the Split Tribal, just because they don't want people to be too pissed off about it. And so I think they, because there's been so much pushback against the whole like Split Tribal Mergatory just design, they tried to minimize the pushback by making people who are less liked to maybe go home there. So, yeah.
What do you mean? Tim is the sexiest dad to ever play Survivor.
I thought that was so funny. I was like, what does this have to do with anything?
It goes back to his preseason stuff, always talking about his wife. But
For sure.
here on Orange, we see Tiffany would rather vote Ben over Tim, maybe trying to keep that +1 alliance strong. The Kenzie and Ben bond over the panic attack probably influenced her not really wanting to vote Ben here, even though like we've seen her say, okay, trying to separate like friendships outside the game, friendships, connections that I have, and strategy. I feel like after helping Ben through that and like seeing that side of Ben and seeing that side of Kenzie, if you're Kenzie, you probably don't want to vote Ben out just from that like personal friendship level. And I think keeping Ben here for Kenzie is going to be a really good thing. And now Ben really has like no real alliances. Maybe he goes back and works with Maria and Charlie, but I could see Ben being like another +1 for Kenzie, and then Kenzie could have a lot of power in the game because she's got more friends.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you connect with someone on a personal level, that can make it a lot easier to connect with them on like a game level. So definitely Kenzie having Ben in her corner, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and good jury management too, because Ben might like Kenzie enough to want to give her money, even if Kenzie's game isn't as good, kind of thing. We
Mm-hmm.
also see Ben say, no risk, no reward. I would be like willing to get eliminated if Hunter plays an idol and go home. Like, I get what he was saying here. Like, yes, you should be balls to the wall. Like, technically, things might fall and you get eliminated. But I also feel like there were things you can do here to try to not get yourself idled out, like splitting a vote or something. It just seemed like he was so willing to put all the votes on Hunter that it was a little odd, because you could just split a vote and not be going home.
I do think it's weird though that Tiff and Kenzie are like, it's a misread to believe that. I feel like from anyone else, I would be like, oh yeah, like they're totally lying. But from Ben, I'm kind of like, I could believe it. I could believe that Ben would be like, this would rock and would be like actually fine with, you know, going home. But maybe that's just me.
Like, yeah, I agree. I feel like from what we've seen of Ben and his personality, like the sentiment of I'm okay to go home. It's not like, "Yeah, I'm quitting the game," kind of idea. I feel like he's meaning it like, "I'm trying to make a big move. If it doesn't work out my way, at least I tried to make the big move. Of course, I'm going to be sad and bummed out about it, but why would I just let myself get eliminated? I would rather try to get, like, Hunter out because obviously Ben isn't going to vote Tim, and Tim's not voting Ben, and you need the Yanu 3. They're the people in power here. So then Hunter's the only person you really can vote for. Like, it makes sense, but also maybe the way he worded it made people think that he was lying about it or like that he was wanting to quit or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's also just that these people don't know Ben as well as the people who have been with him the whole time. So for us, as people who have been watching him this whole game, we're like, oh yeah, that totally tracks. But if you've only known someone for like 2 or 3 days, maybe you are not as much like, oh, that totally tracks.
That totally rocks. That totally does not rock. But I thought this was a sort of sad tribal council. Ben talking similar to like what you just said. Oh, people don't really get to know me in my real life. I'm just an entertainment monkey, fun to be around in short periods, but people don't get to know me on that deeper level. And I was like, dang, that is really sad.
That was really sad. Poor Ben.
But 2 votes go to Hunter and 4 votes go to Tim. Also sad, Tim was crying on his walk out. I'm like, "Dang, that also sucks because 'cause you're, like, so close to jury, but not making jury, like, it's gotta suck."
Yeah. Soda also cried when she went home, but I think it was, probably less of a sting for her because at least she's on the jury. But I feel like this whole thing of like the mergatory person doesn't to get to be on the jury, the person who like gets voted out first in this double tribal doesn't get to be on the jury. I'm kind of like, I get it, but also like, damn, let more people be on the jury.
I guess if they've got Edge of Extinction, everyone can be on the jury.
I guess so.
So Tim gets eliminated at this first tribal. We go to the purple team, where on paper it might seem like Charlie is going to be the person voted out because it's 4 versus 2. Maria won immunity, so Charlie's the only person not in the 4 to be voted for. But looking deeper, the 4 have a lot of problems. So on paper, I guess, not on paper, Charlie isn't probably going to be the vote here because Soda and Venus are fighting.
Yeah, I feel like who was it that said the gaps between the Orange Tribe is more like the oceans between continents? Like that's definitely something that I felt during this half of the split tribal because I was like, it feels like it's either going to be Soda or Venus. Like Charlie ain't even coming up to me.
Yeah, low key, like Soda, her plan is to vote Venus out. Tevin's plan is to vote Soda out. Liz is on board here. Venus separately has a plan of voting Soda and Tevin out, but like Maria and Charlie, they aren't really wanting to co-sign Venus's plan, but they're willing to go with Tevin. Same kind of thing since their plans are like very, very similar. We see Maria and Venus talking where Maria is like, yeah, I'm put off by your demeanor, which I think it's probably good for Maria here to just be straight up rather than to be like wishy washy about it or to be like fake nice or lie and say, like, girl, no, we don't have any issues. But I think it's probably good for her to straight up be like, yeah, we've got issues. I don't like XYZ.
Yeah, I think also it would be interesting to see if Venus has like an Emily type glow up where she takes people's feedback about her and actually like uses it to, change the way she's playing the game. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but I think this is like a persistent problem for Venus where like she behaves a certain way that puts people off, and then she gets she gets kind of upset when people are put off by her, not realizing her contribution to the scenario. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't personally think like, I don't see the Emily turnaround here. I more so see, like, Venus there maybe wanting to keep her around, maybe they vote her out, like, as an easy vote coming up, but I could see, like, if people don't vote her out and she's able to make it to the end, Venus can say, like, "Yeah, I was trying to get people to follow me," and, like, some stuff I feel like she is I guess, like, is very confident, and I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing in real life and can be a good thing in Survivor if she's able to, like, word it correctly at a final tribal council. So, like, here, Venus thinks this is her plan, and she truly believes that. If she's able to frame that in a way that gets respect from a jury, that could be something she talks about, like, "Oh, this was a really big move that I made." It could be interesting if she's able to frame it that way at the end and, like, get people to respect her and like say, yeah, I was trying to do all these things. I did these things. And she thinks she did these things, even if Tevin thinks that this was his move kind of thing. So it would be interesting to see, but it seems like she like rubs people the wrong way in the game that even if she believes that she's made these moves, people might be like, no, that was actually my move, or like, no, you didn't do that, and then like discredit that.
Yeah, I think one thing about Venus is that it's not just enough to try to make moves. Like you have to actually put in the work to like build your social capital. And I think that's kind of the step that Venus skipped, where like she never really like made positive relationships with people, where it seems like her rubbing people the wrong way the whole time is kind of like why her attempts at making moves are failing. Like I think sometimes people aren't on the bottom because like they're unlikable. Like I think Jake from last season is a really good like
Mm.
example. Like he had social capital because people liked him, but people didn't want to play the game with him. Whereas Venus, I feel like she is lacking social capital because of her own choices and not just because it's better for everyone else's game not to bring her along, if that makes sense. So I do think that if Venus does get far, she would probably not get very many jury votes, just because I think that, like you said, people are going to be like, that wasn't actually your move. Like, people didn't do this because you thought of it. People did it because someone else thought of it. And they let you believe that it was because you thought of it because you can be a little bit of a jerk when things aren't going your way.
Yeah, like I could see you want to keep her around because, like people said, you sort of know her gameplay, like you can see what she's trying to do, but people aren't really willing to follow her. So maybe you keep her around because it's sort of like a non factor. If you don't have social capital, like you're not really able to do much stuff. Although I would be worried, like Venus is going to do whatever is in her best interest, which is a good thing. Like that is great. It's not really like a follower mindset. Like she's coming up with these random plans, but people aren't following her. But she has these ideas and she'll do what she wants and she'll say what she wants to people. Then maybe that is threatening and you vote her out because if she's against you, like she was against Soda here, that's not a vote for you. It's a vote against you. And then maybe you want to vote her out. But if she's not really like coming to vote you out, then maybe you keep her around as a number that's like someone easy to bring along.
Yeah. I think the thing with Venus is that she won't recognize like, oh, this person like might not be my top choice, but like is someone who will still benefit my game. Like I think a lot of people in Survivor will be like, I would really like to get this person out, but getting this person out is like my second best option. And if everyone else wants to go with their second best option, they'll still vote for their second best option. Whereas I feel like Venus sometimes is like, I only want to vote my first best option. And so far that's worked out for her, but like it's not always going to. And I think moving forward, that's going to be something that might cause some friction. Where like if you would rather go home yourself than vote your second best option, maybe you deserve to go home.
Yeah, I feel like Tevin trying to take credit, Venus trying to take credit. I would argue like Charlie and Maria have the most power at this vote. And like I know you could say, yeah, then it makes it their move, or you could argue that it doesn't make it their move because like Tevin came up with the plan, Venus came up with the same plan but differently. But I feel like because it's up to Charlie and Maria to decide, like, okay, who are we going with? Who are we voting for? Being in that middle, I would say is more powerful than coming up with a name because Charlie and Maria isn't voting Charlie. So it's going to be one of the other four. They're probably landing on like Soda, Tevin, Venus. They're talking about the same people. Like, I would say that they had more power at this vote.
For sure.
But Maria does seem down for the +1 alliance. We see her mention it in this episode. It will be interesting to see next week how that goes. That Tim of the +1 alliance got voted out, but I think like Q and Tiffany and Hunter could easily say like, yeah, Tim wasn't on board for the +1 alliance. He wanted to vote Hunter out, so we had to vote him out. Like, this is nothing against you, Maria. We still like the +1 alliance. Like, sorry for voting him out, but like maybe I think they can probably smooth it over next week.
Yeah, I think also though Maria was never like super attached to the +1 alliance, so it might also be like, oh, Tim got voted out. Guess this alliance isn't happening. No skin off my nose. So I think it'll be interesting to see next week how that goes. She might also not choose until it gets to tribal council if someone from the +1 is up for elimination. Like if it is Q, for example, that's up for elimination, it could just be like, which is better for my game. So I think Maria has a lot of strong options moving forward, and it's good that she like has a +1 on her radar. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for her if the +1 alliance does dissolve.
I think for Maria, you maybe want Q to get eliminated and the +1 alliance to dissolve because say like the foursome of Hunter, Tevin, Q, and Tiffany, they know Maria knows about the +1. And if they're worried that, like, if they're trying to kick Maria out of the alliance now that Tim is out, then they might want to target Maria because, hey, Maria knows about this secret alliance. We need to vote her out so she can't spill the beans. That could be bad for Maria. Or if they try to make nice with Maria and re-ingratiate her into the alliance, like, oh, because Tim got voted out, you can bring someone new into the +1 or something like that, and she brings in Charlie or someone, like, then maybe, but I could see it getting fishy. Like, hey, she knows our secret. We need to vote her out because she's the only other person not in the alliance now that knows about this secret alliance.
For sure.
But I do wonder, like, has Maria told Charlie about this alliance? Has Tiffany told Kenzie about this alliance? Like, will they tell these people or keep it a secret?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because like Q and Tiff and then Kenzie, it's like they only had 3 people on their tribe. So for Q to be like, Tiff is definitely my +1. If I were Kenzie and I learned about this alliance, I'd be like, okay, Q is dead to me. Just because it kind of shows you that you're like, quote unquote, on the bottom of the 3. And of course, you as Tiff can say, like, oh, I just let Q do this to keep myself safe. Of course, we're going to keep you safe too.
Yeah, I think like if the Yanu 3 +1 got outed, I think Tiffany's in the best spot, like you said, because she could just be like, yeah, I just went along with it. This I didn't have to choose between you, Kenzie, and Q. And that was something Tiffany was worried about pre-merge. Like, okay, going to tribal, am I picking Q or am I picking Kenzie? Who am I going with? Low key though, I feel like Maria and Tiffany should probably keep it a secret unless they are allowed to bring in someone else to the alliance because knowing about this secret alliance and being a part of it and not telling your other buddy about it could be something really good to bring up at final tribal council. Like that is something because if like Tiffany and Kenzie are sitting next to each other or Maria and Charlie are sitting next to each other, you want something that differentiates your game, especially if you were together pre-merge and post-merge now. You want some kind of nugget of information, a secret alliance like this that puts you above the other person you're sitting next to. So low-key, I think they should keep it a secret unless you're allowed to bring someone in, but I would keep it a secret so you have a talking point at Final Tribal.
It becomes the +2 alliance instead of the +1 alliance.
Yeah, once Q gets voted out, and then Tiffany can bring in Kenzie, and since Tim got eliminated, Maria can bring in Charlie. Basically, everyone on the island will be in the +1 alliance.
At one point, yeah. So good times.
But it seems like Charlie and Maria, they decided to vote out Soda because she's a social threat. Venus, like we said, is less threatening because even though she has these ideas, people don't really want to listen to her idea because they're already having this idea separately.
Yeah. I do wonder, like, is it a good move for Tevin to have voted out Soda? Just because I feel like Soda was his closest ally, and so voting her out this early in the game is kind of like, I get that you have to cut your closest ally eventually, but for me, this feels like a bad move for Tevin, where being a social threat isn't actually that big of a concern right now, especially because everyone knows that Soda and Venus are at each other's throats. So, like, I'm not sure.
I feel like for Tevin, it's like fine slash a good thing, like him splitting the vote on Venus just in case Soda played the shot in the dark. Like, I think for him, letting Soda go is fine because we've seen in the episodes Tevin saying, like, he's trying to distance himself from Soda. He thinks she's too good at this game, da da da. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because Tevin has Hunter, and I think if you're looking at like Hunter and Tevin as a duo, people might target Hunter more, so he's able to sort of hide behind Hunter. Similarly, if Tevin thinks that the +1 alliance is a real thing and or the foursome within the +1 alliance is a strong thing, then maybe you don't need another Nami number. And Tevin and Liz seem close. We see them talking this episode. Haven't really seen too much of Liz, but I would assume like Tevin, Liz, and Hunter could be a strong voting block here. So I don't necessarily think like if Tevin actually didn't want to work with Soda and started mistrusting her, might as well vote her out.
Yeah, I do also think we as viewers don't really get a lot of Soda as a social threat. Like, I feel like most of what we see is the Soda Venus beef. So when everyone was like, we have to get Soda out because she's so much of a social threat, like to me, that didn't really ring true. So I would have liked to see the edit support more of Soda being a social threat because otherwise it kind of just feels like a random vote.
Yeah, and I feel like Tevin, Venus, all these people voting out Soda here, low key is good for Hunter though. Hunter didn't have to do anything, and Soda's eliminated, and we saw him like wary of Soda because Soda and Tevin are close. He basically gets to be Tevin's buddy number one again without having to do anything. I think that's pretty good. Tevin is trying to maybe do jury management by not voting Soda out here and voting Venus to split the vote for a shot in the dark. Maybe Soda won't be mad at him for that. So I think like all around the Nami people are doing well, and then it is very interesting because next week it's like 3 Nami, where like Liz, Tevin, and Hunter would be close. 3 Yanu, the original purple, and then Ben, Maria, and Charlie, where Maria and Charlie are close. Like Venus, sort of weirdly in and also on the outs. Ben also sort of in, but also sort of on the out. So it'll be interesting because it's like a 3-3-3-1 with Venus on the outs, but also I could see like Charlie not really fitting in, or Ben not really fitting in, and Venus also not really fitting in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in really strong positions, but definitely seeing how they vote when it's everyone voting together instead of like half and half will definitely change things, which I think is why we like to see them do the whole tribe voting earlier than rather than later. just because I feel like dynamics can definitely change when you have that larger group finally to work with. So I think next week will really make or break the season for some people.
True. Finally, a regular vote. I think it'll be very interesting if like Tevin and Venus start fighting and both of them are trying to take credit for themselves. I'm like, if that happens next week, similar to Emily after Bruce got voted out, saying, like, yeah, I did this, yeah, I did that, will be bad. Tevin should keep his mouth shut and not say anything. Let Venus think that this was totally her move. Let her brag to people and talk about it all the time so she gets voted out. I think in Survivor, you just got to keep it quiet right now and then talk about it at Final Tribal. Otherwise, if Tevin comes out next week and says, this was my move, Venus needs to be quiet, this was not her move, it was all me, I convinced Maria and Charlie to do this, people will want to vote Tevin out.
Yeah, maybe you as Tevin even let Venus take that credit so you can vote her out. Like,
Exactly.
there's no reason you would have to be like, oh yeah, this was me.
Yeah, so I am very excited for the upcoming week. This week's episode was very fun. I had a good time watching it. Yeah, I'm excited for it'll be an interesting final 10.
It definitely will. I'm also really excited, and I'm excited to see how all of these like tribe dynamics shake out. Just because it still feels very much that everyone is playing for their OG tribe, and it's kind of fun and new, especially because I feel like all of the OG tribes like have a chance at winning rather than like the smallest tribe just being totally decimated. So it's exciting. It's fun. Next week is going to be a trip.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments down below what you thought of episode several. Do you like the split vote tribal council format or not? Do you think it was the correct move for Orange to vote out Tim over Ben here? Do you think the +1 alliance will last next week, or now that Tim was voted out, will it crumble because they lost the member? Do you think that Purple should have voted out Venus over Soda here? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all next week.